Hi everyone, I would like to announce our next speaker, Christoph, Managing Director at Sunday. Welcome with the topic Hyper Casual 2023 Predictions. Welcome, Christoph. Stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, Stacy. Thank you for having me. Hey, everybody. I hope you enjoy the conference so far. Also, greetings to Gökbek, who is just was in the talk before me. Good job, man. Cool. Let's get started. So, you probably have had a lot of tips this conference so far. How to improve your game? What's currently going on in the market? Stuff that a lot of developers are trying out, monetization tips, gameplay tips, and so on. So what I want to do is I want to zoom a little bit out from this detailed perspective and just see what will happen next year. So I'll try to do some reading of the crystal ball and try to make some predictions of this very interesting market that we're in. A lot of stuff has happened this year already, and I think it's going to only get more interesting next year. So let's get right in. And before we get started, also a quick introduction about Sunday. If you have not heard of us before, we are this great company with the best logo in mobile games that I've heard many, many times before. A lot of people told me that the logo is great. But seriously, we launched with operations in 2020. So basically, right before COVID hit, we got together as a small team and started developing first and publishing our first games. So now we are 50 people, almost 3 years later, working in different departments, in different offices all across Germany and actually all to the world. So we have our main office here in Hamburg. Then we have people working from Berlin, from Munich, from India, Bangalore. And we are in the process of opening more offices and getting more people from different locations all over the world. We have 10 hit games so far that we are running in live operations. And we have built some of them in-house with several game teams that we have here, and also through our publishing program where we work successfully with a lot of developers also from all across the world. So if you remember last time I was here on the conference, that was around May, I think, I had this presentation called Headwinds in Hyper Casual, right? And I talked about some upcoming problems there. Everyone was a little bit like, hey, it's more difficult to get a hit game on the market. Like some first signs of like there's some big shifts happening on the market. It's not as easy anymore. Were happening. And I tried to analyze this and came up with some predictions also back then, what I think what needs to happen. So this is basically the summary of my analysis from back then. So I looked at what happened in Q1 of 2022, and the result was basically the amount of new hits that got released in the top 100 game dropped by 36%. The total downloads of new hits dropped by 57%, and the average downloads per new hit dropped by 33%. And this was just Q1, right? So we all know this is where just this whole economic downturn that we had in the last month got started. While also back then, all the cash cows were staying quite stable. And then I came up with these proposals, like if you want to keep staying successful in hyper casual, you need to work on those core areas, on these 4 core areas. First of all, product excellence. You need to build better games, better products. Then you need a better testing approach, right? We heard it so many times. Yeah, CPI went up. Where? On Facebook. Why? Because of all of these IDFA changes. So I mean, I keep repeating this since almost 2 years now, right? I'm super happy for all our competitor publishers who still do CPI testing, because keep doing it, guys. You're doing a great job. We don't do it. We have a different approach. Uh, but yeah, I think it's not enough anymore still, and it's getting more and more so every week, every month. Then it's super important to have integrated tracking and automation set up across everything that you're doing, and super critical, owning your own ad demand. That were my proposals from back then. So half a year later, let's see what has happened, and what if this actually has come true, right? So what you're seeing here are the top 7 publishers by download size in the last 12 months. The year is not over yet, so it's from December to November, right? And what you are seeing here is a very actually I just checked that. Okay, this is the wrong screenshot. But what you would see also in the correct one, is that it's a very homogeneous cake of downloads, basically. Like you have all of these different publishers here that are like spread out in a very saturated market, actually. So this is Voodoo, Lion Studios, Azure, Supersonic, Say Games, Crazy Labs, and Rolik down here. So they really split up the market among themselves, like very equally. And there's not so much movement happening except for this like drop that is coming at the end. And when we look at, okay, let's look at December 2021 to November 2022 and compare it to the previous year. This is the shift in downloads that we have seen so far. So basically, only publisher that made significant gains out of the top publisher was Supersonic, which almost growing by 10% by downloads. Then we have Crazy Labs and Rolik, like hovering around 0% growth. And then it starts with Azure and Say Games going down by almost 20%. And Lion Studios and Voodoo really struggling this year, which both of them dropping by 40% in downloads. So this looks very, very worrying, of course. And I think that's what everyone is also talking about in recent months. You know, there's big waves of layoffs going on across tech companies, but also in gaming companies all over the world. And by the way, we also had super ambitious goals for this year. Of course, we didn't meet them as everybody else, but just for fun, I made a comparison like how we did this year, just looking at our downloads. And hey, not so bad. Like we were under our goals, but still overperformed compared to the rest of the market, at least for the top publishers. To be fair, we are in a very different position, right? So we are still a quite small team with 50 people. So we are able to quickly adapt to market changes. And of course, for us, like one or two really big success stories have a much bigger impact than for the bigger publishers that drive 10 times the amount of downloads that we are having, right? Anyway, what is super interesting also that the downloads from new games, meaning games that are younger than 6 months. So I basically took all of the games that were younger than 6 months, summarized their downloads, and divided them by the overall downloads by these publishers over the year. So we can see like how many of the downloads are like what part of the portfolio downloads are being generated by fresh games, by new hits that are being pumped out. And you're seeing here that Rolik and Say Games are doing quite well in terms of they're still bringing out new hits that can generate new stuff, new downloads. And Crazy Labs and Supersonic also doing quite well, while Azure is struggling, and Lion Studios and Voodoo, let's not even start talking about it. There's was basically nothing in the last 6 months, at least nothing new released. I'm not saying that they're doing a bad job in monetizing what they already have, but they didn't release any new significant games in the last 6 months. So how does this affect everybody's product strategy, right? I had this hypothesis, everybody needs to work on product excellence and everybody needs to find their way of doing things. So let's check if they actually change something. So some super interesting stuff going on from Supersonic. If you followed them on social media or like the recent news in hyper casual, they just released a template for runners and at the same time opened up a competition in runners. And from my perspective, that is a very smart move, right? Because in the end, when you release a template like this, that means all of the studios can work much faster with this template, like create much quicker output to the quicker experimentation, because not everybody, like you have 500 studios and everybody needs to write runner code from scratch. There's a huge time invest and it doesn't make sense. Plus you will have varying degrees of quality, right? While on the other hand, when you just give out a template that's already on a good quality level and like all of the best practices are in there, that already puts everything on a much higher average quality level. So what I would assume that Supersonic does this now with the runner template and doing a runner competition. So I would assume that next year they release a different template and also do a different competition, and they will keep releasing even more templates in the future, which also super makes sense because like they're basically part of Unity, Unity and Iron Source, which is the mother company of Supersonic merged. It makes total sense that this stuff gets put up on the Unity Asset Store for free, and everybody can work with it. Then we have Crazy Labs, and Crazy Labs is staying in their super successful territory of simulations, right? It's especially interesting because everyone is aiming for higher LTV games. Everyone is talking about hybrid, casual in their purchase, right? But Crazy Labs is really staying in their lane and executing there very, very well with their simulation genre, which usually is on the lower side of LTV, right? So it's like more of these games that monetize super, super quickly with just a few ad impressions and super high marketability from social media, for example, also. And they are still able, for example, I played this one a lot here, like Mystery Mixing, I think is the name, and they were able to put a really nice meta game on top of that, right? So it's actually very, very simple game. You just pour in some ingredients to a pot, but then they have a nice meta game built around that, and still were able to drive a lot of downloads with this year and innovate in their niche. Then a very interesting approach also from Voodoo. I think yesterday they had their big announcement live stream, and also this week there was a Pocket Gamer article, right? And they call it a new way of publishing hybrid casual or casual games. And when you look at it a little more detail, they are doing this with two games at the moment. So one is Mob Control, the other one is Collect Them All, and I took Mob Control here as an example, right? So Mob Control is in its core an older but very successful hyper casual game that already had good base metrics, right? So you basically open the game, you play the first level, which is like shooting this cannon up down from bottom to top, and then aiming through these multiplier gates. And then when you finish the level, then suddenly this interface here appears, which looks very much like a casual game. And I immediately got reminded, of course, from one of my top games from 2020, Archero, uh, that looks pretty much the same. You see the 5-button navigation here, you see this building in the middle of the screen, exactly also the order where the shop is, like the basically it's like the Archero template, let's call it like this. And it also makes sense, right? I mean, the game even looks a little bit like Archero, like there's a character shooting up, you need to go through the top. There's like a sequence of different levels, like gates that you go through until you reach the end of the level and you can get to the next stage. So it's quite comparable. And my assumption is that they will have several of these templates at hand. Like you cannot do this with every game, and you cannot do it with everything the same with every game. So you need to have different templates that you can put on an existing hyper casual game where it makes sense. And my assumption is they can increase the first of all the retention a little bit by this, right? By offering these different, like the full canon basically of casual monetization, right? They have season pass shops and very many interlocking systems in there, and even get a little bit inner person on top, right? So everyone is talking about, like, yeah, hyper casual needs to get inner purchases in. What I've heard so far, like the best experiments, like 20% of the revenue is in-app purchase, and I think this is one of those examples where 20% of the revenue per user can come from IAPs. So exciting what's coming there next in the future. What else is happening? At the beginning of the year, we were promised an arcade idle revolution. There were a lot of arcade idle games. Some of them were quite successful. Did it fundamentally shift how we do hyper casual games or hybrid casual games? For me, it's same but different. No, I would say not so much. Like when you look at the overall top games that were released this year, like some of them were arcade idle, but it's just a new genre that is popping up from my perspective. And then some companies are focusing purely on puzzle games. it's definitely an approach that can work, but also super difficult to pull off as there are not so many studios and developers that are really well versed in puzzle games. They're difficult to create. If you find a good puzzle game, of course, you hit the jackpot, but it's very hard to pull off. And then also quite interesting, there's some publishers, especially from Asian countries like Vietnam, but also from France, some are doing it, that just really increase the fast follow approach even more, right? By taking super existing proven game concepts and just slapping on some trendy characters from Roblox, for example. Um, Seems to work. Let's see how long it will last. It's an interesting approach, definitely. Yeah, and these are the observations that I'm seeing in the market right now. If you know more, feel free to comment them in the chat, and maybe we can talk about it later. So, of course, you might be interested. What is Sunday doing now, right? So, how are we reacting to the market? And usually, I'm super open with sharing what is our strategy, what do you want to do here, right? So, what I can tell you is we invested a lot in our product strategy, especially how we come up with new ideas since basically since summer. And now we have rolled this out with our internal teams and with our partner studios. And we are seeing really, really great results. In the beginning, was a lot of struggle because it's really a very different mind shift, and not everybody can work this way. But the results that we're getting now are extremely promising. So I will try to summarize it as much as I can without giving too much away, because this is basically our USP, like how we want to crack the market next year, right? So I'm not spoiling too many beans at the moment. Maybe next year. So 3 years ago, how hyper casual games were being built. You basically built games for non-gamers because your main user acquisition channel was still over social media. So in the beginning, Facebook, later replaced by TikTok. Now they are becoming more and more irrelevant. They're still in the media mix, right? Don't get me wrong, but you will get the majority of your users at the moment from SDK networks, which means you buy from other games. That means you are getting users into a game that are already playing other hyper casual games. So you're not building games for non gamers anymore, you're building games for hyper casual gamers. And when you want to address a mass market audience, like what is the highest factor for conversion that someone says, like, hey, I like this game. This video ad looks really, really cool. It is familiarity, right? Personal example from myself. I played Dark Souls 1, really liked it. So what did I do? I bought all of the other titles as well. This is the perfect example of, like, I liked one thing and then I really committed in the whole series, and everything that's a little bit like these Dark Souls games. I'm now like really binge play, and I'm almost finished with Elden Ring soon. So and we try to use these familiarity effects much better in our ideation approach. So we already have some early results. We just launched Spinner Merch last month, and this is driving around 2 million downloads now per month at the moment, which is not too bad for the current market situation. And you can already see that, we have taken a gameplay here that is popular with people, but we found a very interesting twist in it. So we have this internal rule where we keep 70% of the familiarity and try to get 30% innovation in. While here the 30% innovation is like a mainly visual change, what characters we are using, how the interaction between the characters look. But we also keep a lot of aspects like the basic gameplay and the rule set, like how you win at the game, and like how you grow, how you get more resources, etc. Like this. We are also soft launching a game at the moment that looks very, very different, but has extremely promising KPIs. So, yeah, follow us on LinkedIn. Maybe we'll be able to announce soon that this game also hit 1 million downloads. I hope until end of the year, but I cannot promise it yet. Then we also invested a lot into tooling. So we built out further our internal testing dashboard called Sundash, right? And we have already automated our whole testing process there. So you basically just with a few clicks, you can upload a game, and 3 days later, you'll know if this is going to be a hit game or not, or you should kill it. And we want to extend this further even more, right? So right now it's really focused on testing your game, but also we want to put in all of the knowledge that we have regarding ideating, right? So we have a very, very data based approach, and we want to share this data with all of our developers because then we believe that the end results of all of the concepts that are being made can be much, much better instead of giving everyone just a free pass. Yeah, please come up with a game idea just by yourself and having this blue sky approach, which sometimes work, but let's be honest, most often does not. So we want to give you certain focus areas where you can crack a certain successful game concept, and this will be made available to you by the dashboard by showing you the data to build the right game. And then also we want to provide the best tool to operate your studio. What does it mean? If you have published a game with us, of course, you want to know when the next invoice is coming, when you can pay your employees, how your game is doing in live operations, what can you expect for next month, right? So we also extend our dashboard there in giving you operational data about your published game. Then one very important step that we did this year is our switch of our monetization. So we are working together there with our sister company Edjo. Edjo is basically our video network and also our ad exchange that is we have here in the same building. So 50% of Sunday's traffic is already monetized through our sister company Edjo, through the ad exchange, and through our basically own internal company-wide ad demand, and we want to increase this until end of the year to 90%. We are already seeing like very, very promising results, and we'll definitely turn it up to almost our complete portfolio of games. So some predictions for 2023 from my side. Number one, I think that the term hyper casual will become more and more meaningless because there are so many conflicting definitions right now, right? Hyper casual started as a very simple genre where it was about super simple physics games, just a ball bouncing around or an object flying up and down, right? And now we have so many different genres. We have like these games that are becoming more and more complex that trigger in-app purchases, and we call it hybrid casual, but we don't really know where to draw the border, or is it casual already? For me, they're all mainly ad monetized games, and yes, when you have 20% in-app purchase, you're still an ad monetized game. 80% is still coming from ads. So I think we will have better terms in the future. Hyper casual will be staying as a term, but not so used so much anymore. I think we need a better word for it. I don't know yet what it will be, but I think next year or the year after we will find a better one. Then publishers will need to invest more in simulation. Like Crazy Labs is a good example. They have their niche with simulation. They are really focused on this and they're executing on this. A lot of other publishers are doing the same. And I think in 2023, we will we will see the rise of specialized publishers. That means publishers that are really, really specialized in a certain area of making certain things happen. But also that means that for studios, it will be more difficult to switch publishers because then your publisher also has a certain expectation that you can work with them. And then when you want to switch to a publisher, you have to do some retooling and change also your skill set according to their needs. And then a very tough prediction of what I think will happen, or at least I hope what will happen, right? I mean, I'm not no economic expert, but I think the current inflation shock that we are seeing is mainly from rising energy prices, right? And it's not that we don't have enough gas on the world. It's more like a distribution problem, a supply chain problem. So what has happened a lot, that a lot of economies and governments try to buy in a panic mode as much gas as they could. The price shot up, and I think this will recover next year when the supply chain gets more efficient. And that also means that inflation will go down and consumer spend will go up again because people won't have to decide anymore between shopping for groceries or buying an in-app purchase for a sword in a game, right? So that also means that eCPMs in games will recover, and this will give a better monetization again for all hyper-casual games. At the same time, I believe, and this is prediction number 4, that ad networks will keep a very tight grip around ad monetized games. What does that mean? Most publishers are not aware, or not most developers are not aware of this, but surprise, surprise, you're not getting your ad monetization for free. You have to pay for it. You're not seeing this, but the ad network basically keeps 30 to 50% of the revenue for themselves. So what they're doing is basically squeezing the publisher without them even noticing. I think there will be challengers in this market who will shift the dynamics of how this is happening, because in the end, the publisher should be the party that is in power, because they own the content. They carry the majority of the business risk, or the developer, right? And usually it's a shared risk between publisher and developer. But the ad network really just, you know, should be a tool and not a business model in itself. So I think there will be challengers in this market who fundamentally shift how the ad revenue is being handled by ad networks. Thank you very much. That's the end of our presentation. If you have any more questions for this, I think we have some minutes left to handle this. Otherwise, we are still looking for people who join us or in studios who want to work with us. So please feel free to contact us.
Thanks a lot for your fantastic lecture. I guess we have a few questions and we have a couple of minutes to discuss them. So the first question is from founder of Hogo Games. What are your expectations for working exclusively with hyper casual studios?
Okay, so does that mean like when we want to have an exclusive cooperation with a studio? I mean, what we usually do is that we do a test run together, right? So we want to see how you work. We want to see how our values match up, how our communication looks like. There is some kind of trial period, right? So this will basically be communicated to you by our publishing studio. But in the end, we want you to work with our ideation framework. We want you to be reliable. We want you to communicate well and build good, high quality games, right? And to summarize it up, I think that's matches with a lot of other publishers as well. But there are a lot of details, like, of course, what can go wrong. And I would just advise that you like contact us and we set up a call together and do some kickoff there.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Head of Gaming of Made Studio. What will be your specialization in terms of subgenre?
We don't specialize forever, right? I mean, we have a rotating system at the moment where we really focus on one focus area for a limited amount of time. So right now we're spending 2 months in one focus area, and then we shift, right? We don't want to put, like, we want to try in one focus area really, really hard and gain as many insights as we can and share these with our studios and internally and try to really crack this focus area. But when we don't see it working after 2 months, then we will switch to the next good opportunity that we're seeing on the market, right? So it's all in for a period of time, and then we switch again and we retool and focus on the next area.
Okay, thanks a lot for your time, for your fantastic lecture. I hope to see you during our next conferences, and I wish you to have a great holidays.
Thank you very much as well. Enjoy the holidays and Happy New Year.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
See you. Bye.